North Carolina. Right now I can tell, and brother Deacon Fisher. And also, our security is online because he is making sure we're safe. So he's joining us online. So we want to say welcome to him or hey fam, right? And so let's give everybody that's joining us online, let's give them a hey fam. Hey fam. Amen. And for those of you who are visiting for the first time, we don't take that for granted. We're glad that you chose us to worship with. And so let's get it. Y'all ready to get it? Yes, yes. All right. So we have been in the sermon series called Pit Stops to Promise. Or another word would be pit stops to the palace, but pit stops to promise. But the promise that Joseph has is his promise is getting to um, the palace where he will be installed second under the man named or the title is Pharaoh. He will be second in charge, meaning that he will be finally be in that leadership position that the Lord showed him in dreams. For those of you who are just joining us for this sermon series, to give you a recap, we see that when we talk about pit stops, we're talking about everybody knows what pit stops are, right? And for those of you who don't know what pit stops are, usually you see them, you hear that word a lot in racing. And so basically, when we think about pit stops in racing, you ever anybody who's all been to see race cars race? And if you haven't been in person, it's a wonderful thing. But if you haven't been in person, have you seen it on TV? On TV. Well, for those of you who haven't, when the cars are racing, there's times where a car will pull over in a lane that is designated called a pit. And it is designated to change tires, is designated to refuel, is designated really to get the car back together in order to finish the race. And the person who is assisting in this pit stop, getting everything together for this racer, they're doing it in a very quick way because the goal is to quickly get them back on the journey, quickly back to get them back on the race. Short now, I think that's what it's doing. Short. That's okay. And so is the goal is to get them back in the race. And sometimes in our lives, especially on this Christian journey, there's times when we take pit stops. Whether and because in regards to this narrative, with regards to Joseph, his pit stop was not something that he signed up for. It wasn't voluntary, it was involuntary. And sometimes that happens with us in life where we have to take a pit stop where we need some things tweaked and we need to get some refueling going on and we need to change some things in order to get us back into the race, right? And so we have Joseph here who at the age of 17, the Lord showed him a dream, showed him a couple of dreams of what his destiny was going to be. And the interpretation of that dream was that he was showing, but what the Lord was showing him is that he was going to be in a role where people were going to submit to him, he was going to be in charge of it. He was going to be a leader, a great leader. Okay. So what happened is he told his dreams to his brothers, but prior to him telling it to his brothers, there was some issues with him and his brothers because his brothers were jealous of him. Because primarily because the father had favored him. Yeah, yeah. And we know that that can be problematic in families when a father or a mother tends to favor one child over another. Yes. So we have to be careful because even though it was the father who was playing favoritisms, it was the brothers who were at odds. They weren't at odds with the father, they were at odds with the one who was being favored. And so then we have to step back and ask the question, why am I mad at this particular person because they are being shown favor when they're not the one showing their self favor? Right. Sometimes we have misplaced anger. Yeah. Yeah. We mad at siblings but it's really dad or mom's fault because it was them that was doing the favoritism, right?
Right.
That's not even part of the sermon. Let's put that over here. But somebody needed to hear that. So we have to be careful playing favorites because let my kids tell it. They say I have favorite grandchildren, a grand, and that's not true. I love all my grandchildren equally.
Okay.
Equally.
Okay.
So anyway, they were jealous of him. Not only did he favor Joseph, the father favored Joseph, he also gave him a coat that he didn't give the other sons. So he gave him something that he didn't give the other siblings. So really, this son had things that the other siblings didn't have, which also can cause issues, right?
Right.
Sometimes we're in families where we grow up in the same under the same parents, and all of a sudden JoJo gets a car, but I never got one. Susie gets to go to college out of state, but I gotta go to community college. And so sometimes that can create problems. So here's the thing. They were bothered by him. They were jealous by him. So then when he had this dream and they interpreted to mean that they would be eventually serving him, that added fuel to the fire. They was really, really upset with him. So much so that they plotted and was successful at putting him in a pit and then selling him to Egypt. I mean, selling him to some Ishmaelites that were headed to Egypt.
Yeah.
And for the sake of time, we won't really deal with a lot of that. Well, I'll just skim over a little bit what went on in the pit. So his first pit stop was a pit, an actual pit. And we have shared in that narrative where a pit represent and it was a dry pit, meaning that usually this pit usually had the norm was to have water in it because it would be used to water people's flock. And so this particular time that he was thrown in a pit, it didn't have any water in it, meaning that he was in a dry place. Have you ever been in a season where everything is just seems like it's just dried up, ain't nothing flourishing for you?
Yes.
You know, have you ever been thirsty?
Yeah. Yes.
Think about being as a kid when kids used to really play outside. We'd be playing outside from the morning. You know, our parents would kick us out from AM to the PM.
Yeah.
As long as we had our behinds in the house by before what?
Lights
Lights
came
came on. Three lights.
Street light.
Street lights came on, but they kick you out as early as what 9 o'clock. They give you a bowl of tricks and or some cornflakes and kick you right on out the house. And so it's a dry place. And again, he hadn't done anything to them. This was something that the father had done. But because they was jealous, and really what they were doing is they called themselves trying to stop his dream.
Yeah. Right.
And so they threw him in a pit, a dry place, a place of isolation, a place where was nobody in there but him. Have you ever felt just isolated?
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes we're in a season where God has us isolated.
Yeah.
And that's a great place to be. Although it can seem lonely, it's a well for some people we like being isolated. Some people we don't like people. But sometimes in an isolated place, that's a great time to have conversations with you and God because
Yeah.
can we say that he was in an uncertain season because he didn't know what was getting ready to happen to him? This happened to him. All this stuff is starting to happen to him suddenly. And sometimes when something happens or interrupts our life and it happens suddenly, sometimes we need to be isolated because we need to hear from God because far too often everybody got an opinion on what you going through.
Yep. Right. Yep.
Everybody all of a sudden is Dr. Phil.
So true.
Everybody all of a sudden is Oprah.
Yep.
Ain't got their own lives together, but got a lot to say about yours.
Yep.
So isolation is not always a bad thing because that's a time where you and God can commune. Because guess what? When you don't know what to do or you don't know what's transpiring in your life, that is who you need to be talking to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he's in a dry place. But here's the thing, even though he's in a dry place, even though he's in isolation, and even though he is now experiencing what we call betrayal, because again, this betrayal is happening through family. And betrayal hurts because oftentimes betrayal is betrayal because it comes from people that we never really thought would do this.
Right.
We know what our haters will do. We know what they're capable of. But what about them secret haters? Those haters that we don't know that they haters. Those ones that are disguised as friends. And when they get exposed by God, oh, that's some hurtful stuff there.
Yeah.
And so we see here he's in the pit and he's in a dry place. But here's the thing. Sometimes what we do, we're so focused on everything that's falling apart in our life and everything that's not happening in our life and things that people have done that we fail to see how God is blessing us even in the pit.
Yeah. Right.
Because did you hear me when I said normally the pit would be filled with water, but he was in a dry pit because what God was doing is God was preserving his life because although their intention was to kill his assignment, to kill his destiny, God had another plan, meaning that God can take what the enemy meant for evil and turn it around. When you don't feel it. I know I'm preaching now because I feel it in that one leg. Okay.
Okay. Preach.
So he's taking something that is meant to destroy us and he's preserving us because the absence of the water is God's blessing.
Yes. Yeah.
And so he gets through that situation, and instead of killing him, they end up selling him to some Ishmaelites that are on their way to Egypt. Because what Joseph fails to understand or what he fails to recognize in this situation is when God showed him the dream, he didn't show him the process, nor did he show him the destination.
Yeah.
But here, when he is being sold to the Israelites, oh, it's bad. It seems bad. It's bad on the surface. But really, what God is doing is God is orchestrating even that because he's now getting him headed in the right direction. Because the blessing, the promise is in Egypt. So he needed to leave where he was in order to get where he needs to be. Even if that meant that he needed to be sold in the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-huh. There you go.
Yes.
And so Egypt is the destination, but oftentimes when God shows us what he's going to do in our life, he often fails to show, and I don't want to say he fails because God never fails. Often he withholds
Yes.
all the details. But we some nosiness. We some nose. I know if you open up the dictionary, I am one who probably, when it says nosy, it's my picture right there waving at you. I'm working on it because even with my daughter, sometimes I think Brittany this week I was talking to Brittany and I was going to say, well, what? And I said, never mind. Because I've been trying to work on minding my own business. And how many of us know that you got to work at that? Especially, again, I got 57 years of doziness under my belt. I got to work on trying to undo that.
Yeah.
Amen. And so, okay. I think I'm doing better. And so he's on his way to Egypt and he has been sold. So his first pit stop was actually a pit. And now when he gets to Egypt, these Israelites sell him to a man by the name of Potiphar, who is an officer of the guards in Pharaoh's court, meaning that he's almost the equivalent of what we would call a police chief. Like he's over security. And so he sends him there, and while Joseph's there, Joseph is prospering. Everything that Potiphar tasked him to do, whatever his assignment was, he was successful, even as a prisoner. Not a prisoner, even as one who was brought into slavery. He is still successful. And sometimes we find ourselves in these situations that are something that we didn't pick for our lives, and situations that we don't want for our lives. But here's an example that whenever Joseph finds him, he finds himself in a situation, although in slavery, although he is now somebody else's property, whatever that person gave him to do, he was successful.
Yes.
He could have just met, you know how sometimes on the job, and I've been getting guilty of this, you have your review at the end of the year. And how many of us, sometimes we have these things called we have succeeded or we have surpassed the goals. But then some of us, we barely meet it.
Right.
Because that means that we are just willing just to do enough just to get a raise.
Say it.
Right?
Yeah.
And so He was successful, meaning that everything that he put his hands to do, everything that he was assigned by his superior to do, he prospered. And but not only that, his manager, if you will, or the person that was over him, Potiphar, recognized that God was with him.
Right.
He recognized that because of all the success he was gaining, he knew that it was God that was attached to Joseph's life. And so this is another thing that teaches us, no matter the situation we find ourselves, we have a duty to be the best that we can be in whatever situations we find ourselves in.
Yes. Yes.
But then he's great. He's prospering. He's doing all kinds of things. And how many of us know that when we are prospering and when we are experiencing a level of success and we are elevating and all those things, there's always trouble.
Right. Yes. Right.
And for some of you wondering what that sound is, y'all remember Boomerang, the movie Boomerang, where Eddie Murphy played in it and Eartha Kitt. And remember Eartha Kitt
Right.
wanted to, and she had this famous quote. What was it? Marcus. And then she could say some other little things that I'm not gonna repeat what she's saying, but y'all get it. If you watch the movie, you know. So basically, what she was doing is Marcus, in that movie, is she was trying to have relations with him, and he didn't want to do it, but because she was like in a high position, he
Succumbed.
succumbed.
He took one.
Kind of clean her. She was his in it.
He took one for the team.
But she would just do this little purring like that. And so when he was in Potiphar, Potiphar had a wife. And one day when nobody else was present, and Joseph was one that was nice looking, he was a young man, and she saw an opportunity. And what did she do? Instead of saying, Mom, and she said, Joseph, come lay with me. So here he is. He finally has bounced back or has gotten some success. He's not home anymore, but who wants to go home when you've been treated the way that you treated? So have been treated. So he's in Potiphar's house and he's excelling, he's elevating, he's successful. But then here comes Miss Thing, Miss Cougar. And so what we're seeing here is over and over again, she's making the attempt to, she's catcalling for him to come labor her. And what we see here is we see here sexual harassment on the job.
Yeah. Yes.
Again, he's had it tough, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And so he refused her because he cared more about his integrity than he cared about being with her. Because even though he's in slavery, he does have power because Potiphar made him in charge of everything over his house except for what he ate. And sometimes when we have accumulated so much power, we tend to take or overstep and start dabbling in things that we shouldn't be dabbling in. It's called abuse of power. But because he had integrity, he didn't do that.
Yes.
But she gets angry and she tells a lie. She falsely accuses him of trying to rape her. So we had the pit stop. The first pit stop was the pit. Second pit stop is Potiphar's house. And now, because she has falsely accused him, her husband, Potiphar, sends him on and puts him in prison. And that's where we find ourselves today. He's in prison. So as we look, there's a lot to cover in chapters, the end of chapter 39, all of 40, and part of 41. And so for the sake of time, what I'm going to do is I want to read verses in 41. I want to read 39 through 43. And what I'm going to read is I'm going to read how things ended up for Joseph, and then I'm going to go back a little bit and then we'll come back. You know how the movie shows you the ending before the beginning?
Yeah.
So in chapter 41, beginning at verse 39, It says, then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. And so Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in a chariot as his second in command, and people shouted before him, make a way. Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt.
Man.
And so that's where Joseph will land. That's the promise. That's the promise manifesting. But let's back up a little bit because after leaving Potiphar's house, he ends up in prison. And can I just take the story this morning? When he was put in prison, he was put in a particular prison. He was put in a prison that was the royal prison.
Right.
Meaning that anything that had to do with the king, like if you tried to assassinate anything that needed to be investigated that had anything to do with the king or royal officials or anything political, that's where those prisoners would be housed. So when Potiphar put Joseph in prison, he put him in the prison where the royal officials would be held. He put him in the prison where it's the king's prison. And so that's important for us to understand that even though this is a pit stop, this pit stop is preparing him for his next step, which is the promise. Even though he's gone through all the stuff that he's gone through, when he was put in prison, when he was falsely accused, it would seem like, oh my God, I can never kick a break. But what this is doing is it's setting him up for the next step, which the next step is the promise.
Right.
And so he's in the prison. And so he's in a location, and this location is designated for him because eventually he is going to be part of Pharaoh's royal court. And so the location is important. So in this pit stop, he's in this location. And in this location, what just so happened is two of Pharaoh's officials, his baker and his cupbearer, were sent to prison. While they were there, Joseph, prior to getting there, the warden put Joseph in all things prison, meaning that he was again in a leadership position. Do y'all see the pattern here? He was in Potiphar's house, placed in leadership. Now he's in prison, placed in leadership, which is preparing him for leadership. So some might be wondering, like, the Lord has showed you things, but maybe you're not in the position that you want to be in right now. But could it be that the Lord is using the position that He has you in currently because it's preparing you for your next?
Right. That's good. Amen.
Prior to me being pastor of Liberty Hill, I held many leadership positions, one of which was the choir. Do y'all remember when I was the choir director?
Yes.
I didn't have no music background. But yet still here I am directing a choir. Because even though that was not going to be my destiny, God used it for preparation. Because guess what? Even though I didn't have any musical training and I didn't know all the signs and this and all that, I kind of made I kind of made them up until I understood what they were because the musician who was Hugh White at the time, he had so much confidence in me. He would kind of help me along. And before you know it, we had a concert. Do you remember that? I felt like a mini Kirk Franklin. But again, I was head of the choir. I was instructing. I was making sure that we sound as best as we could. But that is not my destiny. But not only that, I taught Sunday school. What else did I do? I did some other stuff. I did all kinds of things. I still do that. I did all kinds of things that was preparing me for here. But guess what? I ain't know nothing about choir, but I did my best to get us. Amen. Yes. Yeah, and I think we sounded pretty good. Yeah. Right. And for Sunday school, I didn't have a lot of education. I didn't go to college or anything like that. But guess what? We got through. Yes. And so sometimes these places that you find yourself, while you think that they're not really important, they really are important. Yeah. And so he's back in a leadership role, and the role that he's in is when these two, the cupbearer and the baker, came to prison, when they were sent to prison, he had to attend them. So that's allowing us to understand that even though he's in a leadership position, he's over the whole entire place, he still was serving. Right. Sometimes we think when we're in leadership, others are supposed to serve us. But we see here with Joseph, he is to attend them. Read it. He's to attend them. And oftentimes when we see the life of Jesus, we see Jesus. Now he is the leader of all leaders, but we often see him serving. Yes, yes. Amen. And so he ends up attending these two. And what happened is when he had made contact with them, they had dreams, but by the time he came in contact with them, they were sad. And he asked them, like, what is basically troubling you? What's going on with you? Here's somebody that's going through it. Can we say going through it? He done been through it. His family done did him wrong. He done been falsely accused. His reputation has been tainted because now he's known as an attempted rapist. All the things, he's in prison. But here he is trying to figure out how he can be of some assistance to somebody who is sad. Yeah. Sometimes we get in our own feelings and we got life is life, and in our own life, we don't want to be bothered with nobody. We don't want to be concerned with nobody because all we're worried about is ourselves. But here, Joseph is a prime example of someone who follows God, and we as Christians who claim that we follow Christ, here he is. Life all twisted upside down, but still has a servant's heart. So my question to you today is, can you still serve even when your life is not doing what you wanted to do? Can you still serve when you feel like you didn't hit rock bottom? Because I think Joseph felt like he hit rock bottom. Right. Can you still serve? Far too often we have this thing of, we have the sense of entitlement, like we are the ones that need to be served. Oh, he could have been walking around, poor me, look at me. If anybody with an ear, let me tell you what happened to me. Or you think it's bad the king sent you here? Let me tell you what my brothers did. Let me tell you about me. Let me tell you how Potiphar's wife did me. Let me tell you how people that lied on me. No, he says, why are you so sad? And so then they begin to tell him everything that was going on. And then he told them, well, he had a dream or whatever. So then he starts to interpret their dreams. So not only is he concerned about them, he's now doing ministry. Yeah, yeah. And he's interpreting their dreams. But here's the thing, when he interpreted the cupbearer's dream, after he interpreted his, because his had a good, and his situation was going to be a positive situation, he then told him, because he told him basically what your dream means is you ain't gonna be in prison long. You're gonna be restored back to your position. Mm-hmm. Basically, you're gonna be exonerated or forgiven, whatever the case may be. And so he told him, he's then slipped in and said, but when you go back, remember me. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm the one who I need for you to help me get out of prison. I need you to know that this is what happened to me. And so when you get back to where you are restored, don't forget me. The one that interprets your dream, the one who has helped you, the one who I've told you my story. Don't forget me. Don't forget me. So then the other baker tells his story, and his wasn't good news. And so both of them was brought back before Pharaoh, and one received death sentence, and the other, the cupbearer, was restored. But guess what? He forgot. He forgot. So even in this pit stop, although he's having success, although he's been serving, although he's, he's serving and he's doing ministry, He's only asked one time, don't forget me, remember me. And he was forgotten. You ever felt forgotten?
Yeah.
How often do we forget about people who we have helped?
Mhm.
Or how often do people we have helped forget about us?
Oh, yeah.
Seems to me that should have been the first thing he should have done. Like, hey, there's this dude, and he told me all this stuff that happened. He needs some help. Again, the helper who asked not to be forgotten was forgotten. And sometimes the very ones who we have been good to, the ones who we have helped,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether you're on a journey to destiny where God has showed you some things, or even on all of us are on the same journey of a Christian journey, there's gonna be
Yeah.
times where you're gonna help people and they're gonna forget about you.
Yeah. 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 Yes.
Forget about it. Joseph didn't have to go and say, why are you so sad? All he needed to do was just do his job.
Yeah.
He went above and beyond to investigate, why are you so sad? What's going on with you? Forgot. But not all the time do we, it's people that we feel like have forgotten us. But have you ever been in a situation where you just feel like God has forgotten? I know I experienced it for years. I didn't understand it. I just felt like, well, this is my life. You ever been going through it for so long that you just felt like this is my life? And whether you say it out loud or not, it's in your heart where you really feel like God's forgotten. And here in this situation, 2 years goes by, nothing. He ain't heard nothing about his case. 2 whole years, nothing. I'm talking about pit stops too, promise. And so if I wouldn't have read what I read, and if this is something that we would have all been approaching this text for the very first time, and some of you may have been approaching this text for the first time, I myself, I know how the end is going, how it's going to end. But just imagine if we were in real time with him watching this story unfold. In our eyes, he probably looks guilty. He probably looks like his life is not going to go anywhere. Can you imagine what he's thinking? All these hits. Every time I feel like I'm getting my footing, there's something that always knocks me back down. And sometimes we can relate to him because, again, God showed him some things, but what God showed him doesn't seem like the math is math.
Right.
It don't look like what God is showing him. All it looks like is I keep taking lick after lick after lick, and nothing that I do seems to last.
Yeah.
I'll have a come up and then I fall back down. I have a come up, then I fall back down. Then I have a come up and I fall back down. Some of us have been in a cycle where you do good, then you get knocked back down. You do good, then you hit rock bottom. You do good, then you hit rock bottom. And it feels like your life is constantly in this repetitive cycle of success, failure, success, failure, success, failure. Whether it's in relationships, whether it's in our finances, whether it's on with our careers, success, success, failure. In our Christian journey. So 2 years go by. But then one day, Pharaoh has a dream. And when Pharaoh tells his dream and how that dream has gotten him worried, it is then that the cupbearer remembers and he basically says, my bad, I have really messed up. I forgot about Joseph. And I will submit to you today that he feels like he forgot, like it was his fault. But I believe that because God, not only is God sovereign, God is providential.
Right.
Meaning that he's like the puppet master,
Yeah.
where even if he's not speaking, he's constantly causing things to get into place.
Yes.
And see, what it is when Joseph tried to help himself, it wasn't time for him to go to the palace.
Right. Right.
And sometimes what we're doing is we're tired of going through ups and downs and ups and downs. And what we're doing is we're trying to help ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And even when Joseph tried to help himself by telling the cupbearer what to tell Pharaoh, it didn't work out because it wasn't time for Joseph to be in the palace.
Right.
2 whole years passed before he was summoned to the palace, which allows us to know, okay, yeah, they forgot you, but it was forgotten not on purpose by them, but it was forgotten on purpose by God. Because until God is ready to move you, there is nothing out there getting better.
Preach.
We have a hard time with process,
Mm.
especially when we're in situations that seems unfavorable. The Bible told us when he was in Potiphar's house and when he was in prison that God was with him.
Right.
Which allows us to understand that God can be with us when we're doing good and when we're doing bad.
Yes.
And sometimes what we think is when we see somebody that has fallen off, or when we see somebody in prison or jail, the first thing we think is, oh, God ain't with them. But here we see that God is with Joseph even in prison.
Yes.
God is with Joseph even when he was falsely accused. God is with Joseph even when his brothers did what he did.
Yeah.
So don't anybody that finds themselves in a circumstance that is just what they feel is rock bottom or terrible, that does not mean, that is not an indication that God is not with you.
Right.
Because it could be that the narrator is telling us after the fact that God was with him, because we can always see God after we come out.
Right.
But can we see God when we're in the midst of it? Because when we tell our testimony, we can say, you know what, God did it, God did this, God did that. But when you're in it, sometimes it's hard to trace God. It's hard to see God, especially when we feel like God is silent.
Yes, it is good preaching.
So just because you find yourself in a hardship does not mean that God is not there.
Amen.
Because he's orchestrating. God is always orchestrating things in our lives.
Yes.
And so 2 whole years go by, and then the opportunity comes. And he is summoned. And what he does is when he is summoned, before he goes into Pharaoh, he shaves and he changes his raiment. Meaning that I can't look like what I've been through.
Yeah.
Because now I'm stepping into destiny. I'm stepping into what is leading to my assignment. And so when he is summoned because Pharaoh has a dream. And the reason why Pharaoh summons him is because the baker realized, oh, I know somebody that interpreted my dream. So when he is in that pit stop, in that prison, there's that connection that needs to be made. So not only is he in prison, but there's some connections that need to be made. And so then he comes on in, and guess what? He interprets Pharaoh's dream. And then not only do he interpret Pharaoh's dream, he gives him some wisdom on how to navigate what the Lord has shown him.
Yeah.
And with that is when Pharaoh said, yo, I'm putting you in charge of some things. I'm talking about pit stops to promise. And so now he is now stepping into that role, that leadership role that God showed him, guess how many years ago? 13 years ago.
Yeah.
He was 17 when the Lord showed him. He didn't step into the assignment that God, his destiny, until he was 30. And so I pray that that's serving as some encouragement for those who are experiencing some rough times in their life. Keep holding on to what God showed you.
Yes.
There may be some times where you're going to want to give up and throw in the towel. There are going to be times where you're going to be betrayed. There's going to be times where you're going to be falsely accused. There are going to be times where people will paint a narrative that's not true. But you keep on holding on. Don't become so engulfed in what you're feeling that you fail to see others that are hurting or in need, that you know that you can meet their need.
Yeah.
Serve while hurting. Serve while sad.
Yeah.
Serve while going through.
Yeah.
Don't just wait until the blessing comes. The blessing is on the way. But how do we know that God is not using the process to shape you into the leader or into the person or whatever the case may be that he is moving you into, the manager, the supervisor, the singer, the rapper, whatever it is. How do you know he's not using all of this to get you ready for what's next?
Yes, yes,
Aren't you glad
yes, ma'am.
that God, even when we think that he's not silent in his movement.
Man, man.
Even Jesus felt like God had abandoned him when he was on the cross of Calvary, when he was taking his pit stop on his way to glory.
Yes.
I'm talking about Jesus. I'm talking about the one who died, bled, suffered, and died for us.
Yeah.
While he was on the cross of Calvary, he said, "Why have you forsaken me?"
Yeah.
And so, no, we're not going to be perfect in the process. We're going to have these feelings.
Yeah.
But you hang in there, just like Jesus hung in there on that cross. And I'm so glad he hung on that cross
Yes.
because he needed to complete that assignment. And after he bled, suffered, and died, he was thrown in, or he was, I don't want to say thrown, he was buried in a borrowed tomb.
Yes.
But it didn't end there. The process continued. And what do they call? They call that Saturday. You know, he was in the tomb, and on Saturday they call it Silent Saturday for a reason. But I'm so glad that he stayed there, he remained there, and he went through his process because the Bible says on the third day he rose. He was resurrected from that situation.
Yes.
And that grave was just a pit stop because he had some more stops to make. And
Yes.
so he arose and he ascended up to heaven and he's on the right hand of the Father. Another pit stop. But guess what? Oh, one day he's coming back. He has
Yes, he is. Yeah.
And so he is our example. Joseph is also our example, but Christ is our greatest example.
Yeah.
You hang on in there because your promise is coming.
Yes.
We hang on in there as Christians. This journey is a constant pit stop. But one day we will reign with him. One day we will be with him. Hallelujah. So we keep on going. Keep on going. Keep on serving. Keep on loving. Keep on trusting. I will
Trust. Yes.
treat you right.
Yeah.
I'm going to treat everybody right. Not certain ones, everybody. It doesn't matter what they did to me. I'm going to, and that's hard.
Sure. Yeah.
But you got to work at, just like I'm working out, minding my own business. Sometimes you're going to have slip ups where you want to be nosy, but then you have to pull it back.
Yeah.
Pull it back. Amen?
Amen.
All right.
And bring
Wow.
word.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.